Hey everybody, 40 Sparky here. Welcome back to my video tip of the week for week number 8. And I'm going to be showing you a couple of money-saving filter tips. If you work with filters long enough, chances are you're probably going to come across something like this. A damaged filter ring. Now it is possible to salvage this filter by getting another filter and swapping the glass out. Now here's the mystery filter that I showed you earlier. For those of you who are sharp-eyed, it was an L37C Nikon, which if you looked it up is actually a clear skylight filter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the yellow filter and put it back in the proper frame, and take the skylight and put it back in the proper frame. Now to do this, there's two ways that filters are inserted into these frames. One is a small spring steel ring in a groove that's on the lens side of the filter that is as it's applied to the lens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of jeweler screwdrivers and I'm going to pull these filters out of their frames, and right now they're reversed. I'm going to switch them around back to where they should be. So I'm going to take these two small jeweler screwdrivers and get in there and remove that spring steel ring, and once it gets started it just pops out, and now the filter is free of the ring itself, the main frame of the filter. Do the same thing with the other one. Just take a couple of small jeweler screwdrivers. Sometimes you can do this with just one small screwdriver, and it just pops right out. So once that's done, I can go ahead and put the yellow filter back into the frame that it's supposed to be in, and the skylight filter back in the frame that it's supposed to go into. Now you'll notice these spring steel rings are not perfectly flat. They have a little bit of bow to them, so they apply pressure to both sides of that groove and hold that filter in there tight so it doesn't rattle around. It's just a matter of sliding it in there, and if you need to, take the little screwdriver and make sure it's seated in there properly and check it. Now that filter is back into where it's supposed to go, and we're good with that one. Repeat the process for the skylight filter. Make sure the glass is set in there properly, and take that unflat piece of spring steel and just gently slide it into that groove. And once that's done, both filters will be back into the proper frames, and so I don't have to worry about remembering which filter is in which frame. And like I say, sometimes they need a little coaxing back into those grooves, but there we go. I've switched them around and everything's back to where it's supposed to be. Now for the other type of method that's used for holding filters in is there's a small threaded ring that goes into the lens cap side of the filter, and that's usually identified with two small notches inside this ring, one on opposite of each other. And usually you can get a hold of that notch with the same jeweler screwdriver and turn the frame, and if you apply enough pressure it will sometimes come loose. And then what I like to do is hold the screwdriver still and turn the entire main frame of the filter around. Saves having to turn and twist the screwdriver at the same time. And you just do that 4 or 5 times around the horn, and because there's a lot of thread in there, and it'll eventually pop out. Just a little bit more here, and they just pops out, and there's the 3 elements that hold that filter together. And I don't have another one I've taken apart, but there's just a solid ring that has the same size thread as the filter thread. I'm going to reverse the process to put it back together, and it's a little bit tricky sometimes, especially with the larger filters, to get them started because you're talking about such a large thin thread to get them threaded together. So it takes a little bit of practice to get those put back together. But once you get it started, it's just a matter of reversing the process. I put the screwdriver into one of the slots, and I turn the main frame of the filter, actually counterclockwise as I'm looking down to it, and I keep twisting until it's in there tight, and I give it a good push to make sure it's in there snug and tight so it won't come out. So a word of warning here, since this is so easy to do and very little investment in tools, the screwdriver here that I used only cost me a couple bucks, it's possible that somebody will go out and buy an expensive filter and a cheap filter, swap the glass out, and sell the expensive frame with the cheap glass in it to you for a good price. And so you end up having a very expensive piece of garbage filter. So when working with places like eBay or Craigslist, be very, very cautious. I'd prefer to buy something like this from a reputable source, a camera store that you can trust, because you can get the good glass in a cheap frame, and that's what they keep, and they put the cheap glass in a name brand frame and sell it to you. You've got garbage glass, and you've subsidized their photography habit. So just beware when working with unknown sources. So this is 480 Sparky. Go forth and actuate.